It's because I rarely, and I mean like rarely ever see a healthy team, healthy leadership team leading with good meeting discipline at the top of churches.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the largest churches where they're like growing and they've got baptisms and people coming to Jesus and they're a mess organizationally. And so then you might say, well, then it doesn't matter. It's like, well, no, it actually does matter because you'll see behind the scenes, you'll see like high turnover, you'll see relational conflict, you'll see unhealthy staff culture. So simple things like write down what you decided.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the last episode of the year for the Leading Smart podcast, season 3, Leading in Real Time. Can you believe it, Tim?
I can't believe it. I was talking to my mom about this yesterday because she is a faithful watcher. She watches on YouTube. And she was saying, "How many of these have you done?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. We started in May, like maybe first or second week in May, so half a
Yeah.
year's
Which
worth."
doesn't it feel like we've been doing it longer than that, though?
It does, Holly. It's almost like we've known each other for like 10 years plus.
That's so true. Oh, man. Well, I said this last week too, because I re listened to the one that we're going to post this week. And I say this every time, but it's so true. I just love that we're doing this in real time so that I can say things like, I'm so sorry about your loss with Notre Dame, Tim.
Wow, that is real time. That was yesterday. Gut punch.
Hmm.
But, here's my philosophy. I know you're not in the
No.
weeds, but our listeners who are in the weeds will understand this. We were 10-2. There's like 4 teams that were battling for that last spot, and we were 10-2. We lost 2 games. So if we had won those 2 games, this would not be a conversation. So I was telling people leading into it, whoever is left out, they could have not been left out by winning the games that they
Yeah.
needed to win. The other like just context is like I'm saving so much money by not being in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So much money and
Yes,
time.
time and money. Yeah, you get that back for sure. But you're still decked out. You've got your Notre Dame mug, you've got your shirt, you're wearing your
Yep.
swag.
I'm
And
repping.
I have one more football thing to say, and then that is the extent of my knowledge. But the Houston Texans won against the Kansas City Chiefs, like, by a
Yeah.
lot. By
I'm 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 pretty happy about that. I'm kind of done with the Chiefs dynasty. Sorry, Taylor Swift. And having lived in Houston for 6 years,
Mhm.
they would be my second favorite NFL team. I don't really follow NFL, but if I did, they'd be my second
Yeah.
favorite team.
And I don't think the Texans have done, like, amazingly in the last few years, right? So that was a pretty big deal that we yeah. We
Yeah.
don't really follow sports much in our house because last night I was turning on we were, like, getting ready for dinner, and we like to sit in front of the TV while we eat our dinner like a good American family, and I was like, "Oh, the Texans are playing the Chiefs," and Elliot was like, "Huh." So that's how we feel about football, but I am unashamedly a bandwagon fan. I love jumping on the bandwagon I do that with the Astros. I don't pay attention until they're actually winning towards the end of the season, and I'm like, "Woohoo!" And I like yeah, so I'll do that with the Texans, it's fine. It's more fun that way.
So for college football, can you adopt Notre Dame? Be on the bandwagon?
Mm, sure.
That was
Uh,
the most non-committal answer I've ever heard.
yeah, maybe next year if they do well, I'll jump on the bandwagon. All
Okay.
right. Speaking of bandwagons, I don't know.
Oh,
Today
wow.
we are going to talk about 5 lessons that we have learned this year. So we went back and we looked at the top 5 most listened to episodes. And then we also looked at some of our emails that we've sent of just kind of reflections that we've done throughout the year. And we came up with 5 overarching themes and lessons that we've learned in 2025 that we wanted to share with you guys today. So they're all pretty different. So let's just take it from the top, Tim. The first one had to do with church boards, which you have spent probably more time than you ever have in 2025 with church boards. So, what have you learned as you've been working with church boards?
Yeah, it's just interesting the number of churches that we're working with and talking to that have outgrown the way that their board was designed. The board was not designed poorly. It just was designed for a church much smaller, much less complex for a different time. And so just kind of in generalities, it's like the difference between a managing board and a governing board. And managing boards work fine when you have 60, 80, 150, maybe up to 500 people in your church. It can absolutely work, where the board is really coming alongside that pastor and helping them make day-to-day decisions, because initially that pastor has no one else beside right next to them as far as staff goes. And so they really actually need help discerning, making decisions. So the board that is right for to start the church, or when the church is really small, becomes the bottleneck, becomes the restriction. And so just so many churches that we're talking to right now, working with, helping them create a board governance that still provides accountability, but also provides freedom for the pastor to lead the church without getting bogged down by having to wait for the next board meeting to get approval for something that's not a major
Yeah.
decision.
I was talking to somebody last week who I was surprised was not as familiar with the way that boards work when it comes to churches. And so this is a really important topic, an action item here. If you don't currently know what your church's board makeup is or governing structure, it's time make this a priority in 2026 of making sure the bylaws are clear, all of that is buttoned up, because it will just save you so much headache. And then maybe avoid a call to Tim that we've gotten several times this year where it's like, we didn't realize we didn't have bylaws. Our bylaws were all messed up. And now our board is at a fork in the road of not sure how to move forward. So yeah.
Every board, typically, this is maybe overkill statement, but most boards in churches have lay people who often have board experience, and that's actually not helpful. It doesn't have to hurt, but it's not in and of itself helpful, because they've been on a school board, or they've been on a corporate board, or they've been on a nonprofit board, or they've been on a different church board. Because of that, they're going to come in with board baggage, board assumptions that are not necessarily going to be helpful in the boardroom of your church. And so that's why you got to write some stuff down and then do some healthy onboarding, so that these folks know, oh, I met just last Wednesday, I met with a board in Southern California and started going through this. And there was a woman at the table, and she says, wait a minute, stop. She said, you have completely redefined my role on this board.
Wow.
She said, this is so helpful. She'd only been on the board, I think, just this calendar year. So just, maybe 10 or 11 months. And she's her eye, and it's like she came in with a different idea of what her job was. And they will, unless you tell them otherwise.
Yes. Ah, so good. All right. So that was number one. Number two is about men and women leading together. We just, in this season 3, Leading in Real Time, the first episode that we did was about what men can do to intentionally foster or support women in leadership, or help women thrive in leadership, I think was the title. And it was one of our most listened to. I think probably will be one of the most. It's so recent, so the numbers will show us over time. But yeah, what surprised you, or what did you learn about this, Tim, as you were reflecting?
It was interesting that it was a very felt need topic. I was meeting with a different board last Friday morning, and they were talking about a role that they're creating, where it will be two leaders will be kind of at a peer level leading a portion of the church together. And this was with the board, and they had a really robust conversation, because in the past they've had the same two roles, and it's been two men. And going forward, an obvious one of the obvious people to replace is a woman. And then they're like, oh wait, can we have a woman and a man leading next to each other? Because what they've watched over the years is they go to conferences together, and they, go to each other's houses and do brainstorming, and their families hang out in the swimming pool, all this stuff.
Mm.
And so they had a really robust conversation around that. And where it landed was the reason that churches that are egalitarian, and I'm not advocating for egalitarian and complementarian, but churches that are egalitarian and theologically believe that they should champion women at every level of ministry, often don't, because of that, because they're worried about what could happen. And what that does is it never limits men from those roles. It almost always, I would say always, limits women from those roles. And then it disallows women from being able to lead at the highest levels that they're capable of leading at. And so really great conversation with a church that fully believes and has practiced having women at the highest level. So I just think it's something that's relevant. It's with us, regardless of where you are theologically on that. All of us can do better at championing women in
So
leadership.
true. I'm so thankful for your voice in that, Tim. And we heard such amazing positive feedback from that episode. We got text messages and forwarded emails of just, thank you for from men and women of just thank you for having this conversation. So that was really rewarding to just see that it's helpful because you even challenged me. I started out that episode and I was like, but Tim, I can't think of any positive example of what this looks like. And you were like, I can think of a dozen. It's because we don't hear about them?
Yeah.
And so that was really encouraging to be like, oh, yeah. And then I started thinking of all of these examples. They're like, oh, yeah, because you don't hear them in the news because they're ordinary men and women, healthy men and women doing their best to lead well together. And that's all we can ask for. So.
Yep.
All right. The third one was meeting discipline, which we did a whole podcast episode on this a couple weeks ago. You and I are actually going to be talking about this. Is it next week? Yeah. I can't believe how fast December is going by. For those of you that don't know, Tim and I lead a monthly executive pastor cohort. It's virtual, and we meet the fourth Monday of every month. You can find out about it on leadingsmart.com. And this month of December, we are talking about meeting structure and discipline. So, why was this one of your top lessons of 2025, Tim?
It's because I rarely, and I mean like rarely ever see a healthy team, healthy leadership team leading with good meeting discipline at the top of churches.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the largest churches where they're like growing and they've got baptisms and people coming to Jesus, and they're a mess organizationally. And so then you might say, well, then it doesn't matter. It's like, well, no, it actually does matter, because you'll see behind the scenes, you'll see like high turnover, you'll see relational conflict, you'll see unhealthy staff culture. So simple things like write down what you decided,
Or even have an agenda.
have an agenda, know why you're meeting, like things like that aren't hard. There's systems behind it that I think actually work well. I mean, you have some systems that make that easy, and you don't have to overcomplicate it. And that requires a facilitator, like, that keeps things on track. And you're going to have in those lead teams, you have some pretty strong personalities. You often have ADHD leaders that are there. And so, like, but you have to have a strong facilitator. They do not need to be the boss of everyone in that room, but they just need to be a meeting facilitator that keeps things on track and that helps you know what you decided. Because how often do we sit in a meeting and say, didn't we already talk about that? I thought we already decided. Didn't we land this? And it's like, yep, we did. It should be in our meeting notes. We pull it right back up and we keep moving on. We don't have to regurgitate it
Yeah.
again.
I spent 4 years trying to solve this problem through software, and it's mind boggling to me the resistance to structure around meetings. I mean, we would always hear, well, we just don't need another thing, or we don't need another piece of software. And it's like, no, you just don't want the accountability of following through on what you should be doing as a leader. Like that, it's not about the
Yeah,
software. If you really believed that this was an important piece of leadership, you would do it. So it is,
that's right.
well, and imagine how much more effective you could be. Like, think about, you and I know are both like ping, 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 ping of the churches that we know that are so successful on the outside when it comes to like attendance and giving and then are a mess behind the scenes. How much more effective could they be if they just prioritized effective meeting discipline? So I love it. Okay, that's 3. Number 4 was senior pastors having clarity on how they're leading after they transition. We did a whole or season 1 was all about succession,
Yeah.
and this came up a couple times. So tell me about why this stuck out to you.
The thing that I think I want to highlight here, there are philosophies out there around succession. I don't know where it started, but where I first heard it was 35 years ago from John Maxwell. And John was talking about leaving the church, and he was pastoring a church in Southern California called Skyline Wesleyan. And then he pulled up from that and then went full time doing what he was doing with helping churches and leaders. So he was just talking in that season about the process of like when you leave a church, you do not ever go back. You do not answer the phone. You do not answer emails. You do not, you completely pull up relationally in every way. Otherwise, that next pastor is not going to be able to succeed. And so there's like a whole system of advice out there built around that, around the fact that the senior pastor um, cannot be connected to that church. And I do think that there are some senior pastors that need to pull up and move on because they can't be in a room that they're not in charge of.
Mm.
And so if that's you or that's your pastor, then that may be really good counsel and advice. But I do think it's possible and I actually think it's like preferable. You have a pastor and their spouse and their family, and they're in small groups and they've raised their kids there. And a lot of times their kids are there raising their kids there. So they've got grandkids there and they still have juice in the tank. They have ideas, they have energy, they have gifts. And so it might be the right time for them to step down from that number one chair. And usually that conversation leads to that. But is there a place and a space where they can still stay connected to the church as a guest preacher, as helping lead the seniors ministry, as coming alongside, maybe helping with meeting with some of your high capacity givers, those that are most invested, and continue to keep those relationships tight. So I just think that has to be now. If you're going to do that, it has to be like very well designed.
Mhm.
There has to be agreements in place. There has to be like a third party kind of objective person that when things raise up, and they will because it's a relational and emotional time and it matters a lot. So there's going to be things, unmet expectations or disappointments that you just need a place to talk about. And so you need to just design it really well so you have that space so things don't blow up when they don't need to. So I just think like that's something that's actually okay. And when we work with churches in succession, we're exploring that, and again, not every case is that possible, but I think in many cases it is and should
Yeah,
be.
100%. We have seen it done well, um, time and time again, but the intentionality is so critical, which is one of the things that we help with in our succession consulting is really making sure that there's a clear agreement or a team covenant. It looks different for every situation that is in place so that it can be healthy for both the outgoing pastor, the incoming pastor, and the congregation as a whole. But I was just talking to a church. They're not yet a leading smart client, but they were, talking about what that might look like to bring us on for something. And they had a really healthy, this pastor I was talking to had been there for a couple of years after the long term pastor who was still around, very much involved in a lot of the areas that you mentioned, the senior pastor ministry or the senior adults ministry, working with high capacity giving. And it's working really well and it's healthy. And so that was really encouraging to hear. Okay, that was number 4. Are you ready for number 5? This one's kind of a fun one.
I think so. I don't remember what number 5 was though.
Which is
Did
hilarious
you
because
tell me?
that's what it's about basically, which is
Oh,
consistency is harder than you think it is, was something that, um
oh,
so this one
I
yeah.
remember now.
The irony there that you
That's funny.
forgot this one. So, I think you and I probably me more than you, have several stories of having every intention of being consistent in one area of 2025 and, failing at that for, one way or another. But you shout out to our friend Jay Cranda. Jay earlier this year did I think it was like 30 days. He posted on Instagram that he did an experiment of what would it look like for him to do an Instagram reel and a YouTube short every day for 30 days. And he wanted to do it just for his own learning. And then he also wanted to see what difference that would make in the algorithm. And Tim, you saw that and you were like, hey, that's kind of cool. Like, what if I took my 40 lessons, our second season, 40 lessons in 40 years, which is also an ebook that we have that you can download. And what if you did one of those every day for 40 days? So you made it to day 38.
I did. It was funny because like the first probably 25, I'd say, this is 40 lessons and from 40 years. When we're talking about that over 40 days. And then I started saying, we're talking about that over 40-ish days because I'd, missed 3 or 4 in there. And then, man, I guess we were starting this episode. I just was telling you like, yep. I stopped at 38.
Yeah, and then we even looked to see what 39 and 40 was, and these are, like, topics you could do in
Yeah.
your sleep. You talk about them all the time.
Yeah. Well, and 39 is one we'd already talked about. It's, Always Believe the Best. We already talked about our podcast the first week of January. We think we're gonna launch with that topic just to kinda set a good foundation for the year. And then, number 40 is the most important task of a leader is spotting talent, which is like those 2 are, up top 10 of all of the 40 lessons, and I just stopped. I just
Yeah,
didn't do them.
it's so funny. What do you think made you not do them? Like, what was it that you think was like, "Okay, I'm done."
Running a company, like, traveling,
Yeah,
and we had a pretty low, bar for, like it didn't re I didn't have to set up equipment. I'm just grabbing my iPhone, and I could be sitting in a car or standing in an airport. So I think just, like, getting my mindset, because you come out of a 3-hour meeting or 3-day meeting with church leadership, and then, like, I'm totally engaged in that. My brain's all there, and then you get to a place of, like, I just wanna think about football because my head is full, and
yeah,
so, I don't know. I kind of even forgot I hadn't finished until we were talking
yeah.
earlier.
I had a similar experience this year. My brother and I launched our Seth Said What podcast, back in when was that? June? Or yeah, it was maybe June or July, I think. And we literally did it every day for like 5 months. I think we only missed 4 days total. And and it was I think every one of those times was because one of us had like a sick kid and we were like it was just too much to juggle to figure out. And it was just amazing how when you put your mind to something, how you are able to do it. Like we found time. We did not have it on the calendar every day. We would text each other in the morning. We're on different time zones. Anyway, it was I think we really surprised ourselves. We even wrote 3 months in, we wrote what we had learned doing it every day for 3 months. And then it was funny because he did a trip. We were at a conference together where we missed several days, which you were also at that conference, which is so funny because I know
Ironically,
we were
you were
together,
together.
but we didn't because you know how like when you're at a
Yeah.
conference, it's just so packed, and you're like emotionally exhausted from talking to people all day. So anyway, that was so ironic. That was kind of where we stopped, really. And then he went on an international trip, and we've done one since then with our friend David Whiting, who's been on this podcast and is on our leading smart team. But anyway, yeah, I think it's funny because it's like I guess I said this lesson was consistency is harder than you think, but it's also not. So it's like if you choose to do it, it's I guess it's how much you care, really.
And everything has a life
Yeah.
cycle,
And that's okay.
and that's
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've also been consistent in another area, Tim, that I've really admired. If you don't mind me kind of putting you on the spot with your health this year, you've been doing some cool stuff with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is, like, bonus lesson because we did 5 lessons, and this
Yeah.
is, you like the sound of 5 lessons
I
in
know. Well, this kind of
2025.
goes with consistency, I feel like.
That's true, that's true. So, yeah, on the personal side, yeah, just, I don't I don't know, like, Tim's consistency with his health is the right headline for this because I don't think that's entirely true, but in one area, I'm just trying to get more proactive with my health because just part of it's just, like, family history, and especially with heart disease, and then just watching kind of friends around me. We just spent a few days with Emily Morgan, just recently, and just reflecting on her Tony passing a year ago, a little more than a year ago. So just trying to get more proactive about it. Instead of like waiting to go to the doctor until there's a problem, it's let me decide what I'm going to the doctor for. So you went through, I think it's called Function Health, and they did like 160 labs, that they just kind of run everything, and then you do that every 6 months. It's a annual subscription. I think it costs like I want to say I paid $350 for the year,
Does that
and then
include
you
the
get the
labs? $350?
yeah,
That is so
yep,
affordable. Because like, if you a lot of times, if you just, like, go get your blood drawn once, it's like $100. That's wild.
yeah. It is. Well, I don't know how they do it. I don't know what their business model is. It may be just they're losing money up front so they can make money long term. But I'm fine with that. I'll help them lose their money. And you can pay extra. So you can pay. I did a little bit extra, like some one time like genetic tests that they can run just to find out genetically what you're predisposed to. And then if you have a specific concern, a specific area, you can do your labs more often. And it's all online on your phone through an app, and then you just push a button and they tell you where to go. It's 5 minutes from my house. There's a lab, and they send you all the results, and then I took those to my doctor, and then took those to a preventive cardiologist, specifically in the heart
Oh,
area,
cool.
and they can just tell you what you're dealing with, and
So do
so
they like when you so like they show the lab results obviously in your phone, but then like do they give you like next steps or are you just like staring at all of this
yeah.
information like what do I do with all this now?
No, they give you like I don't they don't say doctor, but a clinician will
Okay.
give you a summary, and it's written in language you can understand. And if you can't understand it, do what I did, and you cut
ChatGPT.
and paste it into
Yes.
ChatGPT, and then it tells you even all your labs you can cut and paste into ChatGPT, and oh my word, it's like you've got someone with multiple doctor's degrees. It feels
Yeah.
like analyzing what it means. And then they strongly encourage you to work with your health provider or providers for the next
Yeah.
steps. So they kind of give you overview of like, you should supplements and take a look at this and keep an eye on that. And you should retest this every 3 or 6 months kind of thing. So yeah, super helpful for me. I'm a
That's
fan.
awesome.
Um, they don't pay me to say that, but I am a
Yeah.
fan.
We'll put a link I guess in the show notes here because I want to check that out for I've seen you've talked about it a little bit here and there throughout this year and I just think that's so smart of you to prioritize that and then I just can't get over how affordable that is. That's crazy and so awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
What about you?
oh, my
What's been
personal front?
your lesson? Personal family,
Yeah, well,
baby.
I've been thinking a lot about this because I was on it. My friend Heather Italiano, which the coolest name ever. Doesn't she sound like an
That's a great
Italian
name.
boss? Like it's just like
Yeah.
Heather Italiano. Anyway, she has a podcast. Her company is called People Warriors, and she has a podcast. I think it's called the People Warrior Podcast. Anyway, she interviewed me earlier this year. It was sometime this summer, a couple months into running the Ready Network full time, and she said what word do you want to sum up 2025? She asked it way more prolifically than I just said it, but it was like when you look back at 2025, what do you want to be true or what do you know? And I loved that question. It really made me stop in my tracks and think, it was such a anyway, and I think I said, I want to go back and listen to the clip, but I think it was that I was brave. And so here we are in December and I really think that's true. I do
Mm.
I think people because I come across so confident, you know me, Tim, I'm actually very insecure. The people who are closest to me know that it's all a facade. I just have a big mouth. I am very insecure. And so it I've done a lot scared. I sent an email out earlier this fall about like three things I've done scared. That everything I've done this year, I've done scared, even if I came across as confident. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've been toying around. I was just texting with a friend this morning. She was like, "I'm so tired of talking. I'm ready to just do. I'm ready to like do the things that I keep talking about. I'm so tired of just talking about it." And I said, "That's it. Like, we get ready by doing." And I'm really not only am I trying to build a business around that idea to serve others and help them do that, but it is a daily mantra that I'm telling myself. Like, we get ready by doing. So, yeah, that's my personal lesson of the year. I think.
Love it. Love it. And I mean, it was less than a year ago. It was 9, 10 months ago where sprang out and started doing your own thing and
I know it's crazy.
building, building from, I mean, not from the ground up because you had all your reputation and life's work behind it, but really kind of from the ground up. Man, just I'm impressed with how much you have done this
Well, a
year.
lot of that, I mean, leading smart and you have been such a what's the word? Like a springboard for that, Like
Take that.
yeah, it's just been such a gift to be able to partner with you in so many areas. This podcast, all of our gatherings, which by the way, we still have room. If you are if you have
Yes, we
not
do.
signed up for our gatherings, we still have some room in Florida and California and then our lead pastor gathering in California as well, leadingsmart.com/gatherings. But seriously, Tim, it's been so much fun. Do I we talked about this last week, but just to think about like, really, should I really do a podcast? Why do we need a podcast? It was at one of our gatherings this last spring, like in I think let's see, I think it was in California. So that would have been in
I think
February,
so.
right? Or March.
I think it was March.
And
Yeah.
someone said in the room, somebody was like, I think I heard about it on the Leading Smart podcast, and I, like, looked at you because we didn't have a Leading Smart podcast at the time, and so it was funny that somebody assumed that we did and thought they heard something there that they didn't at all, and then that was really the precipice of me convincing you to do this thing, and here we are. However, I don't even know how
Here
many
we are.
episodes and 3 seasons later, so it's been fun.
Yeah. So fun. Well, we're gonna take, a little bit of a
Mm.
break and give you guys a little bit of a
Yep.
break, and then we'll be back in whatever the first Tuesday of January is. I don't know what that date is, but we'll be back, dropping our first episode of the year in early
Yes, we
January.
will. All right, go to leadingsmart.com/podcast where you can find all the links for all the things. Oh, I also want to remind folks, we talked about this last week, but there is an image on that page where you can click to sign up for the strategic planning webinar on January 7th. So go ahead and hop over there. Do it before Christmas gets here because otherwise you'll probably forget. I'll be walking you through some simple strategic planning ideas, thoughts, frameworks for you to take into 2026 with you. Okay, I think that's all for the announcements. Merry Christmas, Tim Stevens. We'll see you guys later.
Merry Christmas. Alright, see you. Bye-bye.